Okay, Bez, Kansas loses on the road to Missouri in the border war. The Jayhawks were down 14 points at halftime, ended up trimming it to 2 points with 2:20 to play. But then Mark Mitchell hit that big time three-pointer, and Kansas really had no answer after that. Kansas moves to 7-2 on the season. And Bez, it's only the fifth time in the history of the game, the history of college basketball, that the number one team has lost back-to-back games against unranked opponents, and the road bug is striking again early in this season. This calendar year, Bez, Kansas is 2-9 in true road games. I'll give it to you first, Bez. Just what are your first initial thoughts? Kansas loses to Missouri.
Sam, when you play for Kansas, you are every team's Super Bowl. And this weekend, I was coaching my team, All Iowa Attack in Kansas City. Our top eighth grade and top seventh grade teams lost to two teams they shouldn't have lost to. And the message after the game was just that. You guys walk in with All Iowa Attack on your chest. You walk in with Caitlin Clark and national championships as your history. You are the target every single tournament you go to. And until you figure that out, you're going to keep losing to teams that aren't better than you. And saying you're 2-9 in a calendar year of road games, that's the same thing. You're not ready for these games. These games have been circled for months for these other teams. They're coming out here ready to pop you in the mouth. It seems like every single one of these road games, Kansas is down 10 or 12 right off the rip, and then they have to make a comeback to even make it a game. And that's exact that to the full extent of what happened yesterday. So that's my first reaction is how come this group and this three specifically of Hunter, KJ, and Dewan, why does that not matter to you? Why is that not hitting your head yet? You guys know this. Dewan and KJ, you know this. You won a national championship. You are everyone's biggest game, especially when you're going into their house. You cannot keep letting you can't keep getting down 10 right away in all of these games. I mean, 2-9 in a calendar year in road games. I don't obviously know, but that's definitely Bill's worst stretch at his time at Kansas. It has to be. 2 out of 11 it's pathetic, Sam. It really is.
Yeah, even Diggy Coit after the game yesterday said that the guys weren't ready to play. Even Bill Self said he didn't think he had the guys ready to play. Bez, I'm not gonna lie, like this game just kind of as a KU person, this game has to irk you. So I don't even want to talk about this game that much. I kind of want to talk about just some general takeaways. I mean, Kansas turned it over 15 times in the first half, and that was the most turnovers of the season in the first half.
Hmm.
It was a sloppy game. Tamar Bates just went absolutely crazy, 29 points, and Missouri played their asses off in this game. I mean, hats off to Missouri. That team played very, very well. I mean, everything was clicking for them. And a 15-0 run in the second half, Kansas trimming it to 2 points wasn't good enough. It just wasn't good enough because of that start. And it is what it is, Bez. It's a quad one road loss, I believe, if Missouri ends up in the top 75 of the net. So it's a quad one road loss. Terms of resume, Kansas may be going after the number one seed. It doesn't really matter that much. But with all of that being said, Bez, last episode, we were saying, is it time to panic at all? And you said, after a Missouri loss, then maybe it's time to hit that panic button. I'll ask you, Bez, have you hit it? Have you hit the panic button?
I don't think so. I mean, it is really early still. It's still December. Yet through whole conference season ahead of you. But I am I'm hovering over it. It's right, my hand is right here because of what we just talked about. It's not like 15 turnovers in the first half. That's not X's and O's. That's effort and that's just caring. That's just literally taking care of the basketball. That's caring about your other teammates. You're not going to the pass, you're letting it come to you. Someone jumps the passing lane. That's on both of you. That's not one person's fault. That's on both of you. That's not X's and O's either, right? That's just literally the most simple basketball stuff they just didn't seem to be doing Sunday. So I'm not panicking in the fact that I don't think the actual like the basketball X's and O's are everything. Yes, Creighton poses some questions, but I think those can get figured out. I'm worried about like just the general morale of all the guys. I mean, it should have clicked by now for AJ. It should have clicked by now for Zeke. And by click, I mean they're not having fun. They don't even look like they're happy out there. And they don't know when they're going to play. Same deal with Rylan. None of these guys know when their number is going to get called, and it's really, really weighing on them. So I'm just kind of worried about the general outlook of like, and honestly, the lack of leadership. It looks like Dewan, how do you not have these guys ready to go, man? This is your game, especially being from there. This is your game, and everybody looks to you. How does this happen? It's just super frustrating.
If you look back at some of Kansas's past teams recently, I mean, starting just from whenever I was, covering the team, that team that got beat by USC in the second round of the NCAA tournament got absolutely smacked. I mean, that was Marcus Garrett's team. That was his team.
Hmm.
You look at the national championship year. That was Ochai's team,
Hmm.
right? Like whose team is this, Bez? I don't think we really know because you got two guys like KJ and Dewan. Yeah, they've been here for a long time, but is it really their team? Are they really the kind of leaders, outspoken leaders? I guess they're probably both really good lead by example guys, but that's something that I think there is to keep in mind. I want to address the panic button. I'm not clicking it and I'm not hovering over it, Bez. And
Oh,
as a lot of Kansas fans do after a loss, everybody seems to be panicking a little bit. And I just want to remind people that this same Kansas team that you saw yesterday beat Duke on a neutral court. And Duke is what everybody pretty much sees as a top five team, potential Final Four contender. And people forget, the offense hasn't looked great. It was torching Duke for a lot of stretches against it was then the number one ranked defense. So I think everybody needs to slow down just a little bit. Winning is hard, and winning on the road is especially hard, especially whenever, like we mentioned, you have a target on your back. So I'm not hitting it yet, Bez. I'm just not.
it's Mizzou though, Sam. It's on the road, huge rivalry game, and you came out and got down 25 points. Like the loss you're right about. The Twitter world of Kansas just collectively needs to take 45 chill pills. It's so ridiculous every single year. It's the most toxic place ever. I hate it so much. But it's just from my point of view, you come out and get dog walked in the first half of your rivalry game. I don't think you have that it factor to make the Final Four. Just straight up don't. That team that played Duke, where the hell are they? That's not who showed up this week. That team was not in Omaha, and it definitely wasn't in Como. So if that team's going to come back, I'm back. I'm back on Kansas, five best teams in the country. Right now, that team is nowhere to be seen, and Kansas is not one of the five best teams in the country, not even close. And to your other point, like, dude, it's a weird situation to where your leaders, like Dewan and KJ, like we're trying to guess that's probably who's leading the locker room. They're not your best players. They're just not. Ochai was. Marcus Garrett was. Jalen Wilson was. Kevin McCullough was the team's best player. Dajuan Harris, as much as we love him as a point guard, in terms of just who's Kansas's best player, I would say Dajuan just because of what he means, but not in like actual basketball skill. There's five guys actually better at basketball than Dajuan Harris on this team. And there's a disconnect of leadership and talent. And I think guys are pissed playing behind KJ. I think they're upset about it. I think AJ and Rylan are looking around like, really? This KJ guy's getting more minutes than us. I can go for 25 whenever I want. And so now this whole like I really think it's a chemistry thing. And to your point, you're 100% right. It's leadership. Where's it at?
The transfers is what I want to touch on here because I just think what one of the reasons why I'm still not panicking is it doesn't fit right away. Like it just
True.
doesn't.
True.
I This team has 55% of its minutes are coming from players in their first year in this program. And then I added the walk-ons to that, not to skew the numbers a little bit. After being in another system, it's just not the easiest to find success right away. And if you look at the landscape of college basketball, a lot of transfers are exploding in year two. Why do you think that is, Bez? Because it takes a second. It takes a second to get used to a completely new system, especially when you've already been in one. You've already been taught certain things. Like Bill Self always says, it's a lot easier to coach high school guys because they don't know. They don't know. So you could teach them exactly what you want to do, and then they know that is the way to play. So it's hard right now. And the overarching point for all of this discussion that we've just had is Kansas has no identity right now. No identity. Like I'll just ask you, Bez, what is this team's identity to you? What is it?
I mean, I think it was supposed to be scoring. I think it was supposed to be we've got guys 9 deep that can give you buckets. And that has not been the case. But we were tricked because it looked like the case after the UNC game, right? Everything we talked about before the season, you go play UNC week one, it's like, wow, we were actually kind of right about everything. Zeke Mayo actually is awesome. So then we get all excited about that. Now that's clearly not the identity of this team because they haven't scored a meaningful bucket in like 2 weeks, it seems like. So what is it now? Is it the defensive side of it? Or are we just going to hone in and be a really good defensive team? I don't know because you're playing Hunter Dickinson 35 minutes. So like, is that ever going to be your identity with him on the floor for that long? So if it's not offense, if it's not defense, okay, we're scrappy, we play hard, we get 50-50 balls. Well, this team doesn't because Missouri beat them to every single 50-50 ball that I've ever seen in the first half. So now where do you go? What are you? Kansas is nothing. Bill said it after the game. He doesn't know what it is. Those are three very big things that you can claim onto as a team. This is what we do best. And Kansas doesn't do any of those things well right now. So I don't know.
Before the season, I would say that, Kansas's identity would have been a team that is just elite rebounding the basketball and just gets it and runs. I mean, that's what people were talking about leading up to the season. KJ's talking about how, he can bring it up. All these different guys can bring it up. Uh, and then, kind of grind out stops when you need to. But I think you're right. Like you're thinking about this team and you're thinking, yeah, this could be an offensive juggernaut, just
Yeah.
an absolute offensive juggernaut. And that has to have been the case. I mean, on KenPom, Kansas has the number 8 defense and is now slipped to the number 24 offense in the country. I believe Kansas was around 17 offensively before the Missouri game. Now Kansas falls to 24. That's just not what you would expect coming into the season. Now, I will say it is actually pretty encouraging that Kansas defense is in the top 10, number 8, playing like it is right now. And that is an encouraging sign. But offensively is where you would think this team was really going to be great. And it just hasn't worked out that way yet. It just hasn't.
I mean, it's frustrating because the pieces are there. Pieces are absolutely there. You got Bill Self at the helm. You do have leadership at your point guard position. The formula for what works in college basketball is sitting in Lawrence. Kansas should be one of the best teams in the country. They should 100% be in the Final Four. But the actual pieces of the puzzle aren't connecting like we thought they were going to. So now it's up to Bill to actually decide. At this point, he can kind of pick the identity, right? Because now you've got 2 losses. All right. I mean, I talked about this last episode. You guys think you guys don't know Jack. I know. You guys don't know. So now we're going to do what I want to do. Screw your stuff. Bill Self ball time. And so I think the team is going to look a little different in how they play coming up. But I mean, rotations is another thing, dude. Like, what are we? There's just so many different issues with this, but it all stems from identity. You're right. It all stems from you don't know who you are as a team.
This is what Self said about Kansas's identity post game yesterday. He basically said that he thought Kansas was close to finding it after Duke, but now not so much. Quote, I don't know that we're close to finding it because who are we? Are we a skilled team? Are we an athletic team? Are we an execution team? What are we really hanging our hat on? Are we a toughness team? I'll be honest with you. I think right now we're kind of in a situation. It'd be hard for me to say from game to game what we are now. And then he went on to say in the follow-up question, if we don't find it, then we won't have a fun year. we'll find it, but teams become teams at certain times throughout the year. And he says, for example, Missouri, that game might have been a huge step in them becoming a team, but he said, quote, I don't know for a fact because, or sorry, he said, we're going to go through ebbs and flows the whole time until we actually become a team. And at this point, we have not yet, because in order to be a team, you have to have an identity. And Kansas doesn't have that yet. Positive is Kansas is going to have some time to figure that out. We'll get into that later. A lot of days off in between games. So Kansas is going to have time to kind of figure this out over the next couple weeks. This kind of leads us into the next topic. The most interesting Bill Self quote of the entire media availability after the game may have been this. He says, I know who should be our starters, but it hasn't translated from practice to games or anything else like that yet. So we'll just have to hang in there and see if we can develop that because at this time, I don't feel great about that. What is Kansas's best lineup, Bez? What
That
is
was
it?
the first thing I thought of. I'm like, who is he even talking about? Because the
That's
starting
what we're here to debate.
it's been different every single game. I mean, it has. I want to see. I was thinking about it this morning because I still like AJ Rylan as the 2-3 with Zeke off the bench. But I just don't think that helps the spacing issues Kansas is having right now. To have AJ, who is a guy that likes to get downhill on his own terms, and KJ, who's just always kind of in the downhill area, I don't, it's not working. It's just not. Zeke has not played well lately, though. He just hasn't. He's not looked like a starting player for the Kansas Jayhawks. Just hasn't. Rylan looks out of sorts sometimes, dude. I couldn't even guess what Bill Self wants to do because I don't think the answer is Diggy. I mean, he was great as, needed some threes to catch up to Missouri down 20. Diggy, let it fly, man. It's all you. That's good for him. He's not the answer to the starting two. I don't think he is. I don't think you can go Flory Hunter right away to start the game. So, dude, it just brings us back to what we were in the beginning, where it's Dewan and Zeke and KJ and Rylan or AJ and Hunter. Like that's just going to be your five. That's what Bill Self wants to do. I think people see this and they're like, well, maybe this means KJ won't start. I really don't see that, and I really don't see the point in getting all excited about that
KJ's
because
going to play. It's going to
as
play.
much as you guys don't think KJ has how much he's hurting our team, Bill hasn't seen enough out of him to where he's going to stash him on the bench. And you know what? It's never going to happen. So it's just gonna it's just Zeke, AJ, or Rylan. It's just those two of the three. Which one he wants to go with. So I don't think there's really any other way.
I think the five-man lineup that he is talking about is Harris, Mayo, Store, Adams, Dickinson. I think that is a lineup that Bill probably wants to be the five. And the reasoning, AJ Store, I think he's very, very capable of being a great defender and a
Totally agree.
great offensive rebounder, defensive rebounder. I mean, you're looking at that five, and I think the upside defensively is really, really good. And then you got two guys, Mayo and Store, who should be able to go and get you buckets. Hasn't really looked like that so far this year, but I think with time that can happen. This is the interesting stuff I wanted to get into, Bez. And if I was Mike Vernon, I'd put my glasses on for this, as they do in the Could Be Wrong podcast. Evan Maya has some very, very interesting stuff. There's basically this lineup tool that he has on his premium where you can look at, Kansas's, the whole country's best five-man lineups, right? And you can kind of just, mess around, look at the efficiency numbers, all of this. Basically, Kansas's five-man lineup of DeJuan Harris, Zeke Mayo, AJ Store, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson right now is the ninth most efficient five-man lineup in the country. And before the Creighton game, or sorry, before the Missouri game, it was number two. It was the second best five-man lineup in the country, that Harris, Mayo, Store, Adams, and Dickinson. Only behind Tennessee's five-man lineup. And if you don't know, Tennessee is probably going to be the number one
Lagging.
team today,
Lagging.
and they're good. They are freaking good. So that is Kansas' best five-man. It's the ninth best five-man in the country. Just something quickly to keep in mind, this lineup has played 88 total possessions together, and it doesn't include the one with Griffin, obviously, or sorry, the one with Store, doesn't include uh I apologize. I'm losing track in all these numbers here. The Griffin lineup,
Sauce.
I messed up. I said Store. The Rylan Griffin lineup was the lineup that was number two, not the one with Store. That is my bad, y'all. So the one with Store, that one has 98 possessions and ranks number 15 in the country right now. The one with Griffin ranks number nine in the country
But
with
either way, they're both top 15 in the country, right?
yes. Both of
Okay.
those lineups are top 15 in the country, but the one with Griffin is slightly more efficient. It's way more efficient on the defensive end, less efficient on the offensive end. And the Store lineup is way more efficient on the offensive end and way less efficient on the defensive end. So it's interesting, Bez. It's interesting. The Store versus Griffin. You know, the numbers are saying right now, advantage Rylan Griffin, but I still think for Kansas to reach its ceiling, AJ Store needs to be the guy. He needs to buy in defensively. He needs to score the ball like he can, and he needs to be comfortable doing it. And once he gets comfortable, I do think it'll happen. I do.
I totally agree. I still think it's AJ. He's the one, and you hit it on the head. Rylan might be the best option right now, but AJ is the one who can elevate your ceiling, who can actually really raise it and really make a difference in March. And like Rylan will too, obviously. Like Rylan's a great player. I mean, shoot, his lineup's one of the best in the country right now. And that really surprises me, to be honest with you, after the last two games we've watched. But AJ is the guy who can get 27 in a big March Madness game. That's who AJ Store can be. And it is weird that the defensive numbers are that different. That Ryland's having that much more of an impact on the defensive end than AJ, and it brings up a lot of different topics you can go into. But bottom line is those are the two that I mean, Bill's talking about one of them when he's talking about his starting lineup. One of them is going to be in there, and it leads me to believe AJ because AJ hasn't really gotten it going yet, and it hasn't really clicked yet. And Bill knows what we're saying. Bill knows that AJ is the best option to reach Kansas's full potential, and that's what he's saying. That it hasn't clicked yet. We haven't. It hasn't translated from practice to in games yet with him. And at this point, all we can do is just wait for it to happen.
Yeah. I wanted to close, Bez, with the KJ Adams discussion because that I feel like is the number one thing that Kansas fans right now are complaining about is KJ. Bill Self said it, y'all. He's going to play, okay? And he should. He should. Like people, do we forget that 2 weeks ago he dominated Duke and then went on. I know it's Furman, but he went on to dominate the Furman game. Like he dominated 2 games in a row. I know he hasn't been the best the past 2 games, but this is the thing with KJ. He is what I think makes KU's defense elite this year, right?
100%,
Like,
dude.
like he can guard anyone. Kansas switches 1 through 4, and KJ can guard literally anyone out there on the perimeter and hang with them. And while there are some issues, like I get it, the spacing issues are still there with KJ Adams on the floor. I still think what he does defensively makes up for that. And Self said after the game that they'll kind of be labbing those offensive issues right now. This is what Self said. He said, "quote If he, being KJ, plays with Hunter Dickinson, how's KJ's man going to guard Hunt, and how are we going to stretch the defense, and how are we going to do this and that?" Well, there's certainly things that we have to work on in order to fit and allow KJ to be effective with Hunter and him in the game at the same time. So those are some things we're still trying to work out and figure out. I think it can be fixed. I mean, Kansas offense in the Duke game looked just fine with those two on the court. It can be fixed. It can.
It's just so weird that Duke game, like, and then as we talked about the Furman game after that, the fact that they put foot down to the pedal and won by 30 against a good team, where did that team go? It was so weird. I don't know what happened after between Furman and Creighton. I mean, goodness, but something went down behind the scenes that we don't know about because It's just so bizarre to me that that team that beat Duke in that type of game, in that environment, everything was awesome. You just lay an egg to your rival. Oh, it's just frustrating me. But anyway, I mean, this poses a question to me of what the hell were we doing last year? Were you not trying to figure out how to play KJ and Hunter together literally all of last year? And now we're still not close to figuring it out, and we're into December of this year. That raises some concerns for me. Of if we haven't figured it out by now, there might not be a figure it out with those two. They're just it's been over 12, it's been like 15 months with them together. How do we not know by now? So I was confident with I was totally fine with it. We'll figure it out until I read Self's quote where he's saying, "We just don't know yet. I don't think we're close." Well, did we not address it at all last year or in the offseason or in fall practice or up until now? I don't know. It's like we said, KJ's not going anywhere. So this is another thing, just like AJ. There's nothing we can do now. We just have to sit back and hope Bill figures it out. Because if he doesn't with these two guys, another round of 32 exit. It's just what's going to happen. Just being honest.
Yeah, and I think the ceiling for this team should 100% be a Final Four. I think fans
100%.
will be disappointed without Kansas reaching a Final Four. I'll close with this, just talking about lineups and everything. I would like to see some Store and Ryland together. I don't know
Hey,
if we have seen any. I don't know if we've seen this lineup this season where Hunt's at the five or Flory, right? And then you got everybody else can shoot. Like Store is your four, Griffin's your three, do the guards however you want, Diggy, Mayo, DeJuan. We haven't seen a lot of the smaller look. And I think that we really see that smaller look whenever Flory gets on the floor. If I'm not mistaken, that's whenever Kansas kind of goes to that. But I want to see what it would look like with Rylan and AJ together on the court more often. Uh,
you're going to have
I
to
was
get KJ
trying
off the court then. You're going to have to take KJ out.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out what the possession numbers were for that duo on the court together, and I'm honestly like struggling to figure it out. Like it's hard because I don't think
Happened that
that
way.
that group has been on the floor together very much at all. So yeah, it's just interesting.
Something's got to change.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, AJ Store and Griffin have been on the court for 67 possessions, it looks like, per Evan Maya. 67 total possessions. Kansas this year is obviously well above that amount of possessions.
Yes.
Uh, the two players that have been on the court for the most possessions for Kansas is guess who, Bez?
Juwan and KJ.
Yes.
Okay. That was, I'm 1 for 1 today. That's great.
Yes, indeed. And Self also said something yesterday, uh, kind of about how, you know, Dewan and KJ, they're going to play a lot, but they're not, offensive juggernauts. So, figuring out that aspect of things, it's going to be hard for this Kansas team to figure some things out, and some things need to be figured out. But I believe in Coach Self. I do. I believe in him.
I do too.
Just really quick, to wrap up kind of Missouri talk. Quick shout out to Dennis Gates for allowing Kansas to get off the court before this court storm. He called timeout with seconds remaining to allow this to happen. And whenever he called timeout, there were already Mizzou fans running onto the court. I remember looking. This one dude, has his phone out, he's videoing, and then timeout's called, whatever, and the ref's like running at him. He's like, oh no, like I've done something wrong here. Got to go back to the stands. And then after that timeout, Dennis Gates kind of during all the hecticness, reached, shook Bill Self's hand, and everybody for Kansas was able to get off the court. And you don't know in a rivalry, situation what can happen in a court storming. I mean, if Kansas players are caught in the middle there, you don't know what, Mizzou fans could say or do
I
to
do.
somebody. So it could have been ugly, and Dennis Gates saved that from happening. So hats off to Dennis Gates for doing that. Just honestly a class move. Class move.
Yeah, very nice from Dennis. really knowing his situation and the people that cheer for his team, just just not great. Honestly, I mean, I would have been really genuinely terrified for Hunter had those animals gotten to go onto the court with him because that would have been bad. That would have been bad. So Dennis Gates, good awareness, man, knowing that got a lot of douchebags ready to run on the floor and beat the crap out of the KU players. Good move by him. Still got the handshake in with Bill and but yeah, I mean, good for Mizzou. It's a big program win. They've been so miserable. I mean, 0-18 in conference play last year, man. Like this is a big win for their program, but I
Yeah.
still hate them with everything in me. And Missouri was still a slave state back in the 1800s, so that's my take.
All right, I want to talk what's next, and then we'll go into the under four. Kansas has NC State at home next Saturday, December 14th, and then Brown December 22nd. Uh, and then conference play starts on the 31st at home against West Virginia. Conference play coming right up. If you notice here, Kansas has a lot of time off between games coming up. And like I said, that will give them a lot of time to figure things out, to go maybe back to the drawing board a little bit. This is working. This is not working. What do you guys think as the players? Here's what we think. Let's figure this thing out. And Bez, Bill Self is the best coach in America. He's the best coach in America. This roster, Bez, is full of talent. It's full of talent. Preseason number one for a reason. I'm not worried. I am not worried one bit. Everything this team still wants to accomplish is right in front of them. A Big 12 title can still be attained. Getting to the Final Four can still be attained. Heck, if the team wants to win the Big 12 tournament, could do that too. Could do that too. All of that is still in front of Kansas. They have the best coach. They have a great roster. 2 games on the road this early in the season with
Right.
a really new team. Just not worried. Not worried.
You said earlier, those are two quad one losses. So all of your goals that you made, those losses in itself don't impact it. But if you let that roll over into your next practices, into your next games, and all of that frustration just keeps coming along, that's where those losses will matter. So Bill has a great opportunity this week to put those two losses in the past, realize resume wise, everything you could ever want can still happen, but something's got to change. And I think him and the staff know that. I think it's been apparent to the players. I like the idea of a little players only meeting, a lot of new faces, like let's hang out, let's talk, like full honesty. AJ, what's up, man? Like, I don't think you've really been integrated yet all the way. What can we do for you to make you more comfortable? Because we need you in the next few months more than you think we do right now. We're going to need you. So just little stuff like that. Big week for that. And I hope we see a different Kansas team this Saturday.
Yeah. Yep. I think Store is going to be fine. I really do. I
I
think
love
he's
them.
going to
I
be,
love them.
he is going to be like, we're going to be sitting here in March, Bez, after AJ Store goes off for like 25 and or something like that against a good team. And we're going to be like, remember Mizzou? Remember Mizzou when he said, what did he do in this game? 2 points, 1 of 7 from the field, 4 personal
Bad.
fouls. We're going to be looking back and being like, man, who was that guy in that Missouri game? All right, Bez. We'll be back here at the under four talking a little bit of Kansas recruiting. I was able to see Darren Peterson live for the first time in person. We'll go over that plus a couple other targets for Kansas coming right up next.
There is no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that.
Welcome back, everybody, to The Hum, a Kansas Hoops podcast via the Field of 68. We are here at the under four, and it's time to talk a little bit of recruiting, a little bit of Darren Peterson. Bez, I got to lay my eyes on Darren Peterson for the first time this year. He's one of the few top 10, top 20, even top 100 prospects in the country that I hadn't seen play. Man, Bez, this dude, Darren Peterson, is the freaking truth. He is so good. He is so good. He matched up with AJ Dybantsa, who, if you don't know, is the number one player and the projected 2026 number one pick. AJ guarded Darren the whole game. What did Darren Peterson put up, Bez? He put up 32 points. He put up 10 rebounds and he put up 8 assists. And he had 20 points in the first half. And just by watching the game courtside, I couldn't even tell you he had 20 points. That's just how easy getting buckets is for Darren Peterson. Like, I saw that he had 20 points and I was like, what? How? He has 20? Like, it doesn't even make sense. He is that good. And the biggest thing that just from talking with him, talking with his dad, is his preparation, his just drive to be great is unlike, I think, anybody in this class. I mean, he is already thinking not just, how can I be the best player I can be right now? How can I be the number one draft pick? And how can I help Kansas win a national championship? That is what's on Darren Peterson's mind. And it's beautiful. It is absolutely Kansas fans.
Yeah.
Next year, I don't know what the rest of the roster is going to look like, but having Darren Peterson as what is going to, it seems like he's going to be the one. That's what Darren and his dad are kind of saying. He's going to be the point guard. It's just going to be a completely different brand of basketball than what we're seeing with DeJuan Harris right now. It is.
There's a time when I'm watching these games, and I will be in many tears when DeJuan plays his last game. But picturing DP bringing the ball up instead of DeJuan sometimes gets me really freaking fired up, Sam Lance. Because holy cow, this kid, there's a path to where he above and beyond what Wiggins did. I'm just going to put it out right now. We'll talk about it a million times next year. Wiggins versus DP, DP versus Josh Jackson, DP versus Ben McLemore. We'll go over it a million times. But right now, it's on the table that he is Bill Self's best freshman ever. Because the number one guy in the world. I mean, AJ is really, really like that. But Derek Peterson is right there. The gap between AJ and DP is so much smaller than what it's being panned out to be because of how good AJ is, yes, and because of how good Cooper was, who used to be in their class, and now he's not. Get all of that. Dude, Darren Peterson is the next great Jayhawk, straight up.
Yes, he is. He is going to be, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to live up to the hype, and it's just, he's just such a good player, man. I'm at a loss for words trying to figure out what to say about Darren Peterson right now because he is that good. I wanted to get into the rest of kind of 2025. Bill Self indicated a few weeks back that Kansas was done in the 2025 class, right? This was a little bit after signing day. He kind of hinted, 4 is maybe too many to have here. You know how quickly things can change in recruiting, Lopez. And there's 2 people I want to talk about. It's AJ Dybantsa, who Darren Peterson played against there in Murray, Kentucky, and Elijah Arenas. Let's start with Elijah. Sources have indicated to me that Kansas is 1,000% going after Elijah Arenas. Elijah is now a target that Kansas wants to bring in for 2025. They will absolutely pursue him. With that, Arizona, obviously, where his dad went, is going to be Kansas's biggest competition here. But I think it's probably going to come down to those 2 schools for Elijah Arenas, and getting him would be big time. I mean, he was a top 5 guy in the 2026 class. I believe he's been put at like number 15 or so with the reclass moving into 2025. Either way, would be a huge get, and Kansas is going to go after him. So just kind of keep that in mind as we move on here. And then AJ Dybantsa put Kansas in his top 4. Okay. This recruitment, Bez, is getting really interesting as it comes down the stretch here. Travis Branham removed his crystal ball pick from BYU. He removed that. pick. That's kind of what everybody was thinking. AJ's going to BYU. They're giving all this NIL, this and that. The vibes right now are maybe that he's shying away from that. And I was able to talk with AJ. I mean, didn't give me anything like great where it's like, oh yeah, I know, he's going to this school, whatever. I mean, it's just how it works. I mean, they just kind of tell you what they want to tell you. But just based off vibes right now, think Kansas maybe has a shot. Maybe. I don't know. I think, I mean, I'll be honest. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on. I don't even think AJ's dad, Ace, who's super involved with his recruitment, knows where AJ is going right now. But I'll just say anything can happen. I can see him going to BYU, taking all that NIL, going to BYU. I can see him going to North Carolina, and kind of, North Carolina's put a ton of dudes in the league. It's a great program. I could see him going there. I could see Kansas just coming out of nowhere, coming out of absolutely nowhere and pulling this off somehow. And I could also see Alabama because Preston Murphy, the coach there who coached Dybasta before, they have a great relationship. He went there during the Georgia-Alabama game, one of the greatest atmospheres probably a college has ever seen. So all of that just to say, I don't know what's going on, but it could be Kansas. It could be,
Right.
People were surprised that Dybasa had Kansas in his top 7. People are surprised that Kansas is in the top 4. There's got to be a reason for it, Bez. I don't think he's just throwing them in there for no reason. Curtis Townsend was in Kentucky to see AJ, gave him a dap and everything after the game. You never know. You never know, because with Flory last year, he was seen as a Duke guy, and then all of a sudden he's committed to Kansas. So never know.
It would be shocking to me if Nike were to lose AJ. I mean,
It would be absolutely shocking to me if AJ picks Kansas, but I'm just saying, you never know. Could happen.
But you're right. Like, why is Kansas sticking around in all of these reveals if there's not some actual merit to it, And I just, that's really interesting. It's really interesting. And that decision is because, like, I mean, him and Cooper were talked about in the same breath last year, and Cooper's decision was pretty easy. We all pretty much knew he was going to Duke. So this is kind of the first big recruit, big decision we've had in a while. So it'll be fun to watch. It's cool to be in there.
It is. Well, all right, everybody. That wraps it up for this episode of The Hum, episode 51 here on the Hum and Kansas Hoops podcast. We will be back on Thursday or Friday before the NC State game, and we will have a very, very special guest that you won't want to miss for that episode. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.